Back on TYT Sports with a truly wonderful headline, and I'm not sure if we'll change it, but Curt Schilling is an a-hole. I mean, Andre's going to join me for this clip because Curt Schilling, the not baseball player, and now I guess talking head, will not close his talking head, and he keeps digging himself into holes that he really can't get out of because it's not really based on any kind of facts. So what is this all in regards to? Some context beforehand. If those of you remember, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Adam Jones, outfielder for the Baltimore Orioles, was about to take his plate appearance for his team against the Red Sox, and in Fenway Park, he claimed afterwards that fans were heckling him, calling him the N-word, and using racial slurs. Right. So Curt Schilling said originally that he didn't believe that story, and then doubled down on it because Curt Schilling, I guess, has nothing better to do with his time. But here's what he said. He said it to WEEI in Boston. If Jones wants to maintain the lie he made here, that's fine. No one denies racism exists, but when people like him lie about an incident and others just take him at his word, it perpetuates a mythical level of racism. And for some reason, it appears blacks believe only blacks can talk about racism and only whites can be racist. I promise if you scumbag yelled the N-word at Adam Jones in Fenway, it would have been on Twitter, Facebook, and every other social media site ASAP, like every other incident, not to mention the liberal Boston media would have broken its neck to identify the racist. He went on to say later on that Adam has an agenda and one needs to only look at his past commentary on race and racism to see it. Before I get to you, Andre, really quick, the past commentary he's mentioning is when asked about why baseball players haven't taken any kind of silent protest, he said it's a white man's sport, statistically true. I think there's 63 African-American baseball players, and it's been, like, numbers wise, is not as dominated as something, let's say, as the NBA or the NFL. But I should say, and question for you, I guess, in this situation is, why is Curt Schilling doubling down on this, and what agenda could he possibly be speaking of when it comes to Adam Jones?
Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate situation all the way around. With Schilling's comments, what makes it difficult is that he's speaking with a level of confidence that you would only have if you were sitting right there. You know, like, I mean, if he wants to maintain the lie, you know, he's lying and people are taking him at his word, is perpetuating these, like he's speaking with so much confidence that in itself is a problem if you don't have the facts. And as you said, like, not to make everything political, you know, he works for Breitbart, and, you know, the kind of alt-right movement is kind of characterized by that, right? You know, where you have these very strong opinions, a lot of them racially charged, a lot of them with little to no fact behind it. And then they're kind of propagated and propagandized until you have whole groups of people believe things that have no basis in truth. So it kind of feels like Schilling is calling out Jones for something that he's actually doing. You know, and, you know, the thing that isn't mentioned in this article about how, you know, Jones said that someone called him the N-word in Boston was how everyone else's reaction, especially black athletes of all sports, you know, to Jones saying that was, I've been called the N-word 5-10 times, you know, like it was so commonplace for them that, like, yeah, it happens all the time. So for Schilling to just kind of jump in with no information and be like, no, this definitely didn't happen, he's lying. You know, it's what did my man in Shawshank Redemption say? It's obtuse into the point of just obstructionism.
That's a fantastic reference. If you watch mainstream media discuss this, and even on my own platform at the Young Turks, they had three of the hosts, two of which aren't sports fans, so they're not really familiar with Fenway Park scene or TD Garden. And of course I have to preempt this with, no, not the entire city of Boston is racist. That's a ridiculous statement. But if you talk to sports fans that are from New England or around New England or have been to Fenway, the reaction has been, yeah, not surprised. And that's a problem. So what's amazing to me also is Curt Schilling's the only person who could say no one denies racism exists while denying racism exists in his own statement. Because that's what he does. He quote, no one denies racism exists except you. What I like about this is that for some reason, Curt Schilling goes after Adam Jones for this agenda thing, and Adam Jones still takes the high road. And Adam Jones said, quote, Curt Schilling goes over there with his rants. He just wants an outlet and somebody will take his call, take his rants. He can keep them for himself because he's never experienced anything like I have. I'll stick with what Mark McLemore said about it. Schilling, hell of a career, but he's never been black and he's never played the outfield in Boston. And truthfully, he has not been. He has not been in that situation, and I think it's hard to empathize if you can't. So it's one of those situations where, as you're mentioning, of course, the Breitbart thing, which is troubling for many of reasons. I'm sure we're gonna alienate some audience with that, but I really don't mind, nor do I care. And it's one of the things that somebody's gotta take away the platform from him, because there's no reason why Curt Schilling should be circulating headlines for what I would think is still a form of hate speech.
Yeah, so you've actually said a few things in there that I would kind of touch on. One, you mentioned earlier about how, I don't know, were we on the air when you mentioned that? That a lot of people kind of felt like police brutality wasn't a thing, no matter how many people said that it really is, until people started having the camera phones. And then it was, for a large segment of society, it was shocking. Like, oh wow, this actually happens.
Right.
And then that kind of,
you guys weren't lying.
Right. And it kind of ties to what you just said about, well, Schilling's never been black. And it also ties into, off the air, I was saying that I'm hoping on the Hoops Lab to have an article come out soon about, that interview earlier in the week with LeVar Ball and Christine Leahy and the responses. But they all kind of have a common thread in that, racism is something that in the 60s and before was very straightforward. It was very blunt. There was, a segment of society, a lot of which had power, that could just tell someone that looked like me to my face, I don't like you because you're black. And their language wasn't going to be that polite. And that's just what it was. Well, it's not like that anymore. Enough change between the 60s and the 80s and the 2000s to where if someone just outwardly says racist things, then they would be shunned from society. So you have a lot of people, I think people forget that it wasn't that long, the 60s weren't that long ago, that's my generation's parents, and so a lot of things that people might feel that they don't want to say doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And, that's what's dangerous about someone like Schilling, who has never been black. When he starts feeling that he can be the arbiter over what the true experience is of people that have had experiences that he hasn't, and when he feels like he can be that arbiter with like confidence and braggadocio and emphatic, and I'm going to call you out. It's one of the parts of society that needs to be overcome for us to get where we need to get. You know what they say, if you're not part of the problem, you're part of the solution. Curt Schilling in this case isn't just being, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. He's not just part of the problem. In a lot of ways, he is the problem. And whether it's his platform or his listeners, because that's the thing, he wouldn't have that platform if there was nobody that believed what he believed and were willing to go along with it. It shows we're not where we should be right now.
I agree with you on very much all of those statements, because again, you're speaking from a place that I cannot, and I like to have these conversations. I like that you're able to share these things with us, because I also know if you go to the Hoops Lab, it's not all basketball. There's actually some really telling stories that Andre's written about, even from the early stages of when you started the website in the first place. And I encourage you to go read them and have your own perspective, own opinion on them, because you're welcome to, and I'm sure Andre will respond to feedback. But I would hope polite feedback. I mean, it's the internet of all places. But But in this case, I guess comments section, comment below. Share your thoughts. You're very cordial, polite.
Don't be scared.
Don't be scared. Thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure to give Andre a follow on Twitter at Professor DRZ, the Hoops Lab, all that stuff. It's in the description box always. You can't miss it. Nice big block in there. And Andre, thank you for joining me on this topic of conversation. Usually we talk about basketball. Sometimes it's necessary to go away from sports.